Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that is, well, it's a genuine public health crisis, and it really needs our focus. We're talking about adolescent mental health.
It's a huge issue.
Mhm.
And the numbers, when you actually look at them, are pretty stark.
They really are. Global health data shows that about 1 in 7 young people, so that's between 10 and 19 years old, is dealing with a diagnosed mental disorder.
And the downstream effects of that are just devastating. We see suicidal behavior becoming the fourth leading cause of death for people aged 15 to 29.
It's just tragic, and that's why we felt this was so important.
Absolutely. Because we know, sort of broadly, that physical activity helps. It's a protective factor.
Well,
But for a parent, or even a clinician, just saying get more exercise isn't enough.
Yeah.
It's too vague.
it's not actionable, and that's our whole mission for this deep dive. We're going to get past the general advice and really dig into the specifics. We're using a new 2025 network meta-analysis that asks a very simple question.
Yeah, what's the most effective type of exercise?
And what's the optimal dose? You know, the prescription needed to really move the needle on depressive symptoms in kids and adolescents.
And this is a really solid source to work from. It pulls together 17 high-quality studies. We're looking at data from over 1,300 young people.
Wow.
Yeah. And it compares 4 specific exercise types. You've got aerobic training, which we'll call AT,
Okay.
resistance training, or RT, then flexibility training, FT, and finally a combined approach of both aerobics and resistance.
So we're going to get some really clear evidence-based answers. But before we get to the results, I think we need to set the stage a little. Let's talk about the inactivity crisis.
It's the essential context for all this. The drop in physical activity among young people is just alarming.
What are the official recommendations?
The WHO says kids need 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity every day. But the reality, over 80% of adolescents don't hit that target.
80%. That's a huge majority.
It is. And this sedentary lifestyle directly erodes physical health, particularly things like muscular strength. And the source makes a very clear connection between that strength deficit and mental health risks.
Okay, so we've established the problem. We know exercise is the tool. Let's get into the overall findings. Does exercise as a general intervention actually work?
Oh, yes. Unequivocally. The collective analysis found a significant positive effect. They use a measure called the Standardized Mean Difference, or SMD.
Right.
And for exercise in general, the SMD was negative 0.36.
Okay, hold on. Let's break that down for a second. An SMD.
Sure.
What does negative 0.36 actually mean for a teenager who's feeling depressed?
It's a great question. So think of SMD as just a standardized way to see how big a change was. Negative means symptoms are going down, which is what we want.
Okay.
And a value around negative 0.3 or 0.4 is considered a small to moderate clinical effect. So it's not a cure, but it's a real noticeable improvement. The person feels better.
A tangible benefit.
Yeah.
But we're not here for just good enough. We want to know what's best.
Exactly.
So let's get into it. The network meta-analysis. Which type of exercise came out on top?
This is where it gets really interesting and maybe a little surprising. The winner, by a significant margin, was resistance training, RT.
Resistance training. So things like lifting weights or body weight exercises.
Precisely. It had the largest effect size by far, with an SMD of negative 0.52.
Wow. Okay, so negative 0.52. That's a big jump from the overall average of negative 0.36. That's moving into what you'd call a large effect, right?
It's approaching a large effect size, yes.
Yeah.
A very substantial impact. And the certainty of that finding was, well, it was almost total.
What do you mean by certainty?
They used something called a SUCRA score to rank the efficacy. It's basically the probability that this intervention is the single best one out of all the options.
And for resistance training?
The SUCRA score was 99.7%.
99.7. So it's almost a statistical certainty that RT gives you the best results among these choices.
That's what the data says. It's incredibly compelling.
Okay, so where did the others land? What about aerobic training, like running?
Aerobics came in a solid second place. It had an SMD of negative 0.40, which is still a very good moderate effect. But its UCRA score was much lower, down at 67.5%. Still good, but not nearly as certain as RT.
And this is the part that really got me. What happened with the combined training? You know, mixing aerobics and resistance, you'd think that would be the best of both worlds.
You would think so, and for general adult fitness, it often is. But here, for adolescent depression, it ranked third. The SMD was only negative 0.30.
So it was less effective than doing either one of them on their own. Why?
The thinking is that for this specific group, a complex program might just be too much. It could hurt adherence, or more importantly, it could lead to fatigue and insufficient recovery.
Right. If you're already feeling down and exhausted, a really taxing workout could just make you feel worse psychologically.
Exactly. It can blunt that sense of accomplishment. And really quickly, what about flexibility training?
Yes. What about things like yoga or stretching?
In this analysis, flexibility training didn't produce a statistically significant improvement. The effect size was tiny, and it just wasn't reliable enough to recommend on its own for depression.
So resistance training is our clear winner. Let's talk about the why. Why is lifting something heavy or doing push-ups so much more powerful for mood than, say, going for a long run?
There are really two key mechanisms here. One is physiological, and the other is psychological.
Okay, let's start with the physiological.
It goes beyond just the typical endorphin rush. Resistance training is particularly good at regulating what's called the HPA axis.
The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Right. It's basically the command center for your body's stress response.
But wait, aerobic exercise is also famous for reducing stress and cortisol. Why would RT be so much better at regulating that specific system?
It's a good question. The hypothesis is that it's about the type of stress. The intense short-term stress of resistance training seems to almost recalibrate the HPA axis for this age group, making the body more resilient to other stressors in a way that chronic cardio doesn't quite match.
It's like it toughens up the brain's stress thermostat. That's fascinating. Okay, what about the psychological side?
This might be even more important. It comes down to self-efficacy and a sense of control.
Which is something adolescents often feel they lack.
Exactly. Resistance training is built on a principle called progressive overload.
Yeah.
Week after week, you see tangible, measurable proof of your own effort.
You can lift a little more weight?
Or do one more push-up. It doesn't have to be about lifting massive weights in a gym. It could be mastering a bodyweight squat.
So it's not just feeling better, it's knowing you were getting stronger. You can see the progress.
Yes. That direct feedback loop, my effort led to this measurable success, is incredibly powerful for improving mood and building confidence. It's a direct link between action and reward.
That makes so much sense. Okay, let's turn this into a concrete plan. If you're listening and want that evidence-based blueprint, what are the exact numbers? What's the prescription?
The study gives us very precise targets from its dose-response analysis. Let's start with how long each session should be. The minimum effective dose, so the absolute floor to see a benefit, was about 20 to 30 minutes.
That's the starting point. But what's the optimal duration for the biggest bang for your buck?
For the most significant reduction in symptoms, the sweet spot was between 61 and 75 minutes per session.
60 to 75 minutes. And what was the effect size in that window?
It was a huge SMD of negative 0.72.
Hang on, that's more than double the effect of the 20-minute sessions. So that extra 40 minutes or so literally doubles the clinical benefit.
It's a massive incentive. It shows that sustained effort really, really matters for this.
Okay, so about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. How often per week?
This is a really crucial finding. The optimal frequency was clearly 3 sessions per week. That gave the best result, an SMD of negative 0.42.
And what about doing more, like 5 times a week?
This is the key. Increasing the frequency to 5 sessions a week did not provide any additional benefit. The difference wasn't statistically significant.
That is so important for kids who are already overscheduled. More is not better.
Not here. It isn't. Pushing for 5 days a week could actually be counterproductive. It could introduce stress, overwhelm, and lead to them just quitting altogether. 3 times a week is the perfect balance.
Right. Consistency and recovery. So, final piece of the puzzle. How long do you have to stick with this plan to see the biggest changes?
The most pronounced reduction in symptoms happened in programs that lasted between 6 and 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, that period gave an incredible SMD of negative 0.74. Now, the benefits were still there in longer programs, but that initial 2-month block is where you see the sharpest, most aggressive improvement.
So a focused 2-month commitment can make a huge difference. Let's just circle back to that surprising finding about resistance training beating the combined modality. What does this really tell us about treating depression in young people?
It tells us that the goal here isn't just general fitness. For depression, the simplicity and the clear psychological feedback of RT might be its most powerful feature.
The feeling of getting stronger.
Yes. That feeling is more reliable for boosting mood in this vulnerable group than a more complicated, more exhausting routine that might actually reduce their adherence. Simplicity wins.
And that leads to a really important caveat, a distinction that you said we have to make when we look at these numbers.
Right. We have to be very precise with our language. Seeing a statistically significant reduction in symptoms, which is what we've been talking about, is not the same thing as achieving clinical remission.
Explain that difference. We hear those terms, but what do they mean in practice?
Reduction in symptoms means the person feels better. That's the minimum clinically important difference, the MCID. They've moved from, say, severely depressed to moderately depressed.
Which is a huge victory.
A massive victory. But clinical remission, by the official DSM-5 definition, means the complete absence of all depressive symptoms for at least 2 weeks, with no impairment to their daily life.
So exercise is a powerful treatment, but we shouldn't see it as a standalone cure that guarantees full remission in every case.
Exactly. It's a primary powerful therapy, but we have to manage expectations and understand it's part of a broader treatment strategy.
That's a perfect point to land on. So to summarize the core takeaway for you, our listener, the evidence from this huge analysis points overwhelmingly to resistance training as the most powerful tool in the exercise toolbox for youth depression.
And that empirically backed prescription is 3 sessions per week, with each workout lasting about 60 to 75 minutes. And you need to commit to that for at least 6 to 8 weeks to see the biggest impact.
Now, as we wrap up, here's one final thought for you to take away. This study was very specific, looking at just 4 types of exercise. It had to exclude other things like dance and, importantly, team sports.
And the source material itself points out how critical social interaction is for adolescents, especially those dealing with loneliness and isolation.
So the question for you to think about is this. What are the unmeasured benefits that those excluded group activities might offer?
Right. Even if a team sport isn't technically the single most efficient way to build muscle, could the social connection, the teamwork, the sense of belonging, could that provide a different, maybe equally vital form of mental health support that you just don't get from working out alone?
It's a great reminder that the best plan is holistic. It has to address the body, but also that very human need for connection. We hope this deep dive was helpful. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.